This episode is sponsored by Life Architect. As the IFS Institute's international partner, they organize trainings and online workshops about IFS and other modalities for those new to IFS and experienced practitioners alike. Life Architect is committed to advancing the professional development of mental health professionals around the world. The One Inside listeners can now get free access to 3 Life Architect IFS webinars, plus a 30% discount on selected on-demand workshops. You'll find all the details and links in the show notes. Welcome to Season 6 of the One Inside an Internal Family Systems podcast. I'm Tammy Sallenberger, author of the One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about their inner world and who have a desire to connect to that authentic self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I am super excited today to have Dave Adamusko on the podcast. He has been a friend / acquaintance for a couple of years now, I think. Is that right? It's been a couple of years. I was on your podcast about the Enneagram. Dave is a certified IFS therapist and approved IFS consultant. He does all kinds of stuff. He's been a PA. I'm not even going to give the list because we're going to talk about so many of these things that he does. But Dave, welcome to my podcast. Welcome to my home. You had me at your home, so now you're at my home. And let's start where we always start, which is where are you in the world and what do you see when you look out your nearest window?
I'm in Mesa, Arizona right now. When I look out my window, there's a giant plant kind of blocking things, and I'm looking out into a little bit of a courtyard. Just imagine I'm looking out into this with the lovely saguaro painting behind me, a picture of a beautiful Arizona sunset. So,
yeah, is that what that's called? That cactus thing? What is that? Is that what's called? But to me, it just looks like a huge cactus.
yeah, and they're very unique to this part of the Southwest U.S. and sort of northern Mexico, where there's just this very small range in the world where saguaro cactus grow, and it's right here. And they're really beautiful. It makes the desert feel less barren and more beautiful to be around them. So, originally from the East Coast, northeast suburbs of Philadelphia. So, my wife's from here, so we moved out here and relocated the family. I started a practice out here in Arizona maybe 5-6 years ago, and have just loved being out in the West and camping and hunting and being in the mountains, being in the desert. It's beautiful here.
So I wanted you to come on because you and I have talked about your specialty of direct access
Yeah.
throughout the years. So we've talked about this being your jam, something you're super into, something you love teaching and talking about. And I find that it is in all the consulting work that I do and all the people I talk to about IFS, it's one of those things that is hard either to wrap our heads around or kind of how to do it and how to do it well. And so I want to talk about that. But we also talked about you having a little ADHD and having interest in all kinds of fun stuff. So I want to talk about that too. But why don't we start with direct access? And so for people that are not in the IFS world, if they're not clinicians or practitioners, tell me what direct access even is. What are we talking about for the average person?
Yeah, we're kind of talking some inside baseball here. So for those that aren't clinicians, you'll probably just skip to the next episode and tune this out. But those that really want to nerd out on IFS and how it works and the minutia of implementing the model, direct access is essential. You mentioned the same thing that I usually talk about, where it's kind of feels like it's apart from, especially after a level 1 training. But to answer your question, sum it up, there's a way in which we do IFS therapy. And if anyone's ever had it or done it, it's typically done in this way where a person closes their eyes, they go inside, and they either visualize or they sense or they feel the parts that we're trying to get to know and understand and create a better relationship with. And so it's very meditative. It's almost it's like a guided imagery that you may have done in yoga class. Close your eyes, go inside, and notice this part. And in the IFS world, we call that insight. And that is traditionally how the model is implemented. However, sometimes people have a hard time differentiating, or in IFS land, we call it unblending, from a part where it feels like a part is just kind of consuming us. If we've ever been super angry or super sad and we don't feel anything but that, and whatever that part is feeling, the anger that we're feeling in that moment, it just feels like we're going to be that way forever. And then 10 minutes later, we calm down and realize, "Oh, wait, like the things I thought 10 minutes ago, I don't think that now." But when
Mm.
we're in that moment, and for especially clients that have perhaps a more extensive trauma history and more protective parts, um, we need to engage with the parts in a different way than close your eyes, go inside and notice the part, because they say, "I can't. It is me. There is no part that is me." So direct access is a way in which we, as practitioners of the model, talk directly to the part. That's why it's direct access, because rather than going inside and being like an intermediary where the therapist is kind of on the outside looking in and you're talking to the self and the self is talking to the part, we're just talking, but hey, but yeah, that sounds really frustrating. I'm going to talk directly to this angry part. Is it there? Can I talk to it? And it feels kind of weird and different and strange, which is why I think people struggle with it, as you mentioned, during doing consulting work.
Yeah. So here's you just said a lot of great things. So I'm gonna kind of like slow us down a little bit. So for people that are, practitioners and are doing this work, they can hear it one way. But for people that are like, oh, let's take a peek inside the playbook,
Yeah.
they
Hmm.
can still sort of look inside and see, all of our secrets. So
Yeah.
what if let's can we role play it, and I'll be a client and you do some direct access with me. How does that sound? We can just role
That
play.
sounds great.
Okay. Okay. Well, so I was visiting my mom in Maryland, and my my mom is like completely involved in my sister's marital stuff, and it's like my mom just, like, every time we talk, she's, like, complaining to me about, like, my sister this, my sister that, or, her more about the husband, and, like, just complaining, 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 and, like, I'm just so frustrated because 'cause I'm just like, "Mom, like, what's happening with you? Why do you just keep talking about that?" And there's nothing I can do about it, and she'll just be like, "I'm just so worried, I'm just so worried," and I'm just like, "Oh," like, it's annoying that, like I'm like, "Am I more concerned about your worry, or am I more concerned about, like, what's happening with my sister?" Like, ugh.
Yeah. Did you do you notice when you go, ugh, that I felt that. That feels very real to me. And so, do you notice you got that part that is just, ugh, it's kind of maybe annoyed or fed up? Those are my words. If you resonate with it differently, let me know. But that's what I sense. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, that feels really good that you even pointed that out, that it's like,
Yeah.
ugh.
I'm I'm really curious because it seems like that part showed up a lot when you went to visit your mom, and I'd like to get to know that part a little bit better. Is it okay if, like, this is gonna seem a little strange, but just bear with me here. I'd like to get to know that energy a little bit better. And so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just kind of notice that energy, and however that energy would respond, I'm going to ask you some questions and you just respond not necessarily as you would, but as that energy would. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah.
Cool. So you got a sense you're connected to it right now?
Yeah, I almost wanna be like, ugh. I wanna, like, move
Yeah.
I'm, like, slouching, and I'm just like, ugh, eye
Yeah.
roll, heavy
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really
So,
embodying it.
yeah. So first off, what I want to say is Hi.
Hey.
It's it's nice to meet you. I'm really curious about you, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about you. Would that be okay if I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Cool. But first off, I'd like to say, like, I'm glad that Tammy has you.
Well, I just want you to know that I'm not as nice as Tammy, so if you're expecting me to be as nice as she is, then you're gonna be really surprised.
Oh, no, I get that, and I actually think that there's a reason why you're not as nice, or it's interesting to me that you even would think that you're like, you notice that you're not nice. And I'm curious, like, if I were to ask Tammy what she thinks about you, what do you think she would say?
She would say that she doesn't know that I'm even around because she doesn't ever let me, like, come out or I don't ever get any airtime. So she would just be like, "Oh, no, that's not a part of me." Like, she would deny me.
Oh, yeah. What I want you to know is, like, part of what I wanna help Tammy with is to not deny you anymore, because I think you're really important, and I'd like to help her understand why you're important. And I noticed that you kinda show up with an energy, and I'm curious, like, what's your fear or concern would happen if you didn't show up with that not nice energy?
If I didn't show up with that energy, then I would be ignored. Like, my energy is so different than her nice energy that I would be ignored. So I have to show up with this big, different energy to even try to get attention.
Yeah. And what happens if you don't get attention?
Then other parts have to come in and, like, do something with her anger. So, like, either make her eat or sleep or, like, just be too busy because no one like, we're not allowed to be angry. So if we're like I'm like, "Ugh," then and I get ignored, then something else has to come in to, like, help with the anger that I'm feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and then other parts kinda come in, and I'm just curious what happens if you get ignored? Like, what is it may seem like a dumb question, but, like, what's so wrong about like, what happens when you get ignored?
Well, first off, I feel like I'm used to it. Yeah, like, I'm used to being ignored, and then I think it just makes me even more mad. Like, I'm just like, oh, like when what quickly happens is, like, I'm annoyed with the situation I just talked about, and then this, like, Pollyanna part comes in to be like, "Blah, blah, blah." Like, so Pollyanna always wins. I don't yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah,
just
and you're not
annoyed.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
obviously,
and I
yeah.
and I hate to sound like a broken record here, so forgive me, but I'm I'm still really curious about what it feels like, or what is the concern about being ignored? Like, it seems like that's happened because you mentioned it a few times. Like, tell me about being ignored and what that your experience with what that is.
Yeah, I'm not annoyed with you asking the question. I appreciate, like
Cool.
I think that I'm ignored so much that I don't know how to answer the question, but it almost feels like I'm gonna throw up. Like, it's like I'm there's been so much anger or so much stuff in my
There you
it's
go.
like there's so much stuff in my body that's been
That's
put
right.
in that I'm, like, so full that I'm gonna throw up.
When did you realize that you first had to show up with this energy to avoid that? How long have you been doing this job for, Tammy?
I hear or I sense this, like, since she was 2 since she was 2, and she lost something. I don't know if this is actually correct, but at the time, but she was 2 and she left something at this pizza restaurant and her dad would not go back and get it for her. And
Yeah.
she was not allowed to be mad about that. And she was devastated. It was like her security blanket. Like she left her security blanket and her dad wouldn't go back and get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad that 2-year-old Tammy had you to protect her in that way. You showed up when no one else did. And so what I want to do is I'd like to help Tammy under, understand your story better. And I'd like to help her be able to go to that 2-year-old and help her heal from that experience. Like, what if I told you you could do this job in a different way, that there was help for you, that you didn't have to do it all by yourself anymore?
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to like throw a fit. Like, can I throw a fit about that not being able to go back, like, on behalf of the 2-year-old? Like, I would like to
Mhm.
throw a big effing fit about, like, that 2-year-old not getting her security blanket when she's gonna go spend the weekend with her dad, and now she doesn't have her security blanket with her. Like,
Yeah.
what the actual hell?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to be able to throw fits a little bit more. I don't think that answers your question, but that's just what came up. Like, can I
No, it
throw a fit
does.
more?
Absolutely does. You can. And again, like I'd like to help Tammy give you the space so that you can throw the fit whenever you need to in a way that's safe for you and safe for other people.
I think Tammy would like that too, because there's a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
she needs to be throwing a fit about, and she's not. And so she's doing other things that aren't good for her instead of throwing a fit, which and she
Yeah.
needs to be throwing a fit about some stuff.
Yeah. So thank you for chatting with me, part. And is it okay if I have Tammy come back now?
Yes.
Yeah. You kind of came back anyway. You were kind of there at
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah. That was great, Dave. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. And so what I would do in the session, this is kind of like what I help people in like the workshops I've done on direct access and in consultation, is like there are transition points, and that's where people struggle with the use of direct access. It's like now we've got the protective part joined with me and on board, and we've gone through the 6 Fs. And then now it's like, now I talk to you, Tammy, and be like, I just had a great conversation with this part. I learned a lot about her. Was there anything that stuck out to you? Were you on board? Did you hear that? Because some people are like, I wasn't listening. Or more often than not, people will say like, yeah, I heard it. What do you want to say to her now? It's kind of like in, more like EFT couples, it's like enactment. It's like we've deepened them, like Sue Johnson would say, we've deepened them, and now we like do an enactment where they're ready to like connect with each other. And so now that in IFS terms, we've done the unblending, and that direct access helps that unblend. And so now the self energy, now the self energy is stronger there, it's unblended. You can then, and so then I turn, because the goal of IFS is always to create that self to part relationship. And direct access is just a way to facilitate that very powerfully.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And, yeah, it feels like it was a very quick way to unblend and befriend and get, like, lots of information that I don't know that I would have gotten as powerfully if I would have gone inside and shut my eyes and try to connect with this part, and I don't know that I even noticed it was there until what you pointed out. Like, you did such a great job, Dave, of, like, noticing something that I was doing, like, kind of in my body and what I was saying that I wasn't even really even aware of. So it
Yeah.
was, like, very fast track, which was amazing.
Yeah. And part of that just comes from doing it a lot. And that's kind of like the direct access soapbox that I stand on is, in level 1, we have this way of teaching direct access because there's so much to learn in a level 1. There's so much of the basics. There's so much of your own work that you're doing. It's just like a bit of a roller coaster. So it's like you spend a quick amount of time and on direct access. When you come out of it, some people I find are really confused about it. And the practicing is really important. And what ends up happening is in level 1, they say something that's very true, but it's like, here's this skill. Use it with your most traumatized clients, the most blended clients, the clients that are, really stretching you clinically. Here's this skill and like put it on the wall, put it behind glass, and in case of an emergency, break the glass and then use this skill at the time when it's like the most hard. It's like, here's this mountain bike that you're learning. Go take it up on the desert trail where there's like rocks and gravel and steep inclines and learn how to ride a bike that way. And so my thing is always just use it. Use it with the most easy client that you have, the one that you feel like you can make a lot of mistakes and it doesn't hurt the relationship, or you have some wiggle room. Because when you have a client that has a really protective system because of trauma, you can't make as many mistakes. You have to be really sharp at it. And if you
Yeah.
haven't practiced it, no wonder it's awkward. No wonder it's hard, because here's this thing that is kind of different. And another part of the soapbox that I stand on about direct access is it's an experiential technique.
Mm.
And we forget that. Like, yes, IFS is extremely experiential in that the fact that our clients are feeling a lot and they're really engaging with parts and going through this very powerful experience, but it's also very guided imagery-esque, which is one
Mm.
form of experiential. But direct access is different. It follows more of the traditions of like Gestalt, empty chair, psychodrama, like, play therapy, sand tray, where you really step into the world of this sort of, it's not imaginary, but it's a metaphor, it's a part, and you really step into it. And that
Yeah.
can feel a little strange and different if you don't have experience with those other models. And that's where I got my leg up in doing direct access, because when I learned IFS, I was working for a program where my full-time job was doing experiential personal growth, 5-day emotionally focused workshops. A lot of psychodrama, a lot of experiential techniques. And so when I went to my level 1 and sat down, that was the only time I was sitting across from one person, having them close their eyes and go inside and do the work. I then had to go back to my full-time job and sort of figure out how to take this
Wow.
internal
Right.
thing and say, "Oh, you wanna look at anxiety, that part of you that's anxious or annoyed or angry? Can you ask so and so over here to represent that part of you? Find a place in the room in a body posture and show them how to be that part." And then I'd have them, like, switch roles, and I would be talking to somebody as if it was their part. So, I was doing this with everybody, and then I just got this thing that feels kinda awkward and strange became quite natural.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of practicing it and practicing it with like the easier, which I'm putting in quotes, like sort of the easier
Yeah.
clients you have, or even in your own work, right? In your own work, begin to like, what happens if I embody? Like, what if I purposely blend? Like, what if I purposely blend with this part and let it say something, or let it journal, or let it write, or let it talk? Like, what if I begin to like purposely blend in order to really get to know the part?
Yeah.
Would it be helpful for us to talk about so what we're talking about right now in IFS, we talk about it as explicit direct access. Can I talk to the part of you who drinks every night? Can I talk to the part of you who thinks you need to be perfect? So can I talk to the part of you, like my part, that's angry and not allowed to be angry? So we call that explicit direct access, where I'm explicitly talking to the part. What about implicit? You want to say more about implicit direct access and what that means?
Yeah, so in IFS, they sort of differentiate two ways of doing direct access, which to me over the years have kind of become so meshed together that I really don't even distinguish between the two of them. But yes, there is this designation that explicit direct access is what we just went through, where I explicitly said, "Hey, I noticed this energy, this or this part of you. Can I talk to it?" And then I start talking to it. Implicit direct access is kind of, well, it's less explicit. It's implicit. You know that you're
You
talking to the
can't
part,
use
but
the
you don't.
word in the
Yeah,
definition. You can't use the word in the definition.
yeah. You know that you're talking to the part, but the client might not. You don't say it out loud, "I'm talking to this part." Someone comes in and they're just angry about their weekend with their spouse or their mom or their kids, and they're just and you go, "Oh, that's a part." And rather than saying, "Hey, go inside and notice that part," you let that part talk.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, that's just how IFS is. It's like how your clinical brain just eventually makes that shift, where as soon as the client walks in the room, you're just noticing their affect, their body language, their tone of voice, and going, that might be a part. And rather than like halting everything and stopping it and going like, let's go in and look at that part, which you can do, you just kind of let it breathe and you go, interesting. I'm just going to talk directly to this part. And you know that you're talking to the part, but the client might not. Um, and then usually it's kind of like you can use implicit direct access. And people say like the beginning of every session is basically implicit direct access because you're hearing about their week, you're hearing about their update, or you're checking in with parts that you looked at last time and just kind of reading the room and tracking parts. And so implicit direct access is just noticing the parts and actually speaking to them. And to me, at this point, that has become so natural to me that it's hard to differentiate that from the rest of it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense that it's like that's just what you're doing because you're noticing that the person's in a part, right? Like they're in this part, and then okay, I'm noticing that they're in this part, and you're letting them have some space um, before we kind of define or decide like who's the target part going to be, whether that's I'm gonna do explicit direct access with the part or do insight with the part.
Yeah, and sometimes, when a client's system is particularly blended, that y it's hard to even they jump from part to part so quickly that you can't stop and say, "Now I'm talking to this part, and now I'm talking to that part." It seems kinda strange,
Yeah.
and that feels a little off to me, so there's a lot of times when they're jumping from part to part, um, that I'm just going along, and it appeals to my MFT brain because in marriage and family therapy school, the second you start meeting with clients, you go to supervision and they're like, "Well, why is there one person in the room? Don't
Right.
they have like, don't they have a significant other? Don't they have a grandma? Bring Uncle Tom in, like bring cousin Edna in, like bring everybody in the room, bring as many people in as fill this room full of people. Like your MFTs, fill the room. Like there's a system here, and when you see the person in their system, like it's gonna go better and you're gonna get better at this. And so part of that training of just having lots of people, having the system in the room is, and sometimes we forget it's internal family systems.
Yeah.
So we're with a bunch of parts. We're with them and like they show up and it's like, who's here? Isn't this interesting?
Hmm.
And direct access can fine tune that perspective and that skill of being engaged. And direct access forces you to be more engaged and less kind of separated, where I'm out here and I'm going to direct you through this sort of at arm's length.
Yeah.
You get in there and you're like, "Who's in the room with me?" And you said something
Yeah.
before that's also really important, which is you mentioned befriending. As part of the 6 Fs, we befriend the part. And it's kinda strange that, like, the therapy model has this like step in it that tells you like, be friends. And we say it and we kind of like move on. And like, what does that mean? It just means like maybe just being in self energy, or maybe it means like getting to know it or checking your parts. But to me, it's like, do can I really, like, can I care about this part?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I use this analogy in my workshops. It's like, it's kind of like if you show up to the party and there's somebody at that party that's interesting to you, how do you befriend that person at the party?
Hmm.
And it's going to be different if you show up to the party and it's like the life of the party and you're like, I want to get to know, I want to befriend that person, versus somebody who might just be like a little more um cautious, or kind of the wallflower. They're like hanging back and it's like, I want to get to know that person. The way I would approach those different people in getting to know them, I might have a slightly different energy. And so that's part of it, is getting really comfortable of being like, oh, this part has its own set of needs. It has its own particularity that like, but I want to get curious. I want to befriend it. And the first thing you say is, hi,
Hmm.
I'd like to get to know you. You seem interesting to me. And that's the thing that throws therapists totally off. They're like, how do I transition from this, like, go inside, notice these parts, all of a sudden talking to it? And that's where the experiential technique comes in. Because if you're trained in psychodrama, if you're trained in Gestalt, if you're trained in like the empty chair techniques, or even do a lot of play therapy, that stuff, you're trained how to do that. And so in IFS, sometimes we sometimes forget that like it's experiential and you have to teach experiential techniques in order to get better at this.
I love that. I love that. Is there anything that you want to say about the list of things that you just said for people that don't know, like psychodrama, empty chair, gestalt? Like, is there anything you want to say about those that would help people kind of wrap their heads around the skill, or what it is that they're bringing to the table that we could practice a little bit more in the IFS community?
Get some cross training, because sometimes it can really help. Like the psychodrama is an entire world where you are creating a visual, externalized experience of what's happening on the inside, and you learn these different techniques that allow you to be quite comfortable at, here's this person and they're representing something else, but for the time being, I'm going to talk to them and treat them as if they are this thing. And sometimes they'll be like, well, like I said at the end of yours, when you were like, I could tell you sort of shifted out of it. And what that does is it also allows you to develop this like fine-tuned radar for people's body language,
Hmm.
and like SE does that, like sensory motor. They're hyper focused on like every little like twitch and eye movement and muscle shift in their seat, like, but it helps to say like something shifted there,
Hmm.
and you were in the energy of that part and now you're not. And I felt that shift.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's like we pretend that that didn't happen even though we felt it. And
Yeah.
going with it and going, oh, this feels different, and be able to talk about that and to say those things, helps to bring more authenticity to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it's like we're bringing our thinking of a family system, right? Like I'm bringing my family of parts into it too, because I'm also noticing this actually happened for me today doing a consultation. We're talking about the Enneagram actually, and something really shifted and I felt it. And I was like, and so I said, okay, something just shifted. Tell me what happened. And it's something completely, yeah, and something completely different had happened that was really important, and I was so glad that I said it instead of just kind of ignoring that, but I've had to do my own work in order to pay attention to that and in myself, if that
Yeah.
makes any
And that's
sense, but
the internal family system. Someone
yeah.
just walked in the room and I want to know who it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the curiosity of noticing that shift and being like, oh, someone else is here. Let's find out who it is.
I
Like,
love that. I love
welcome in,
that.
come on in, like,
Yeah.
and you
And
notice that,
hi. Yeah.
and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you were saying one thing, and it was like definitely one tone. And to me, that's the sort of like that tracking, that implicit direct access we were talking, where you're just tracking and you're noticing like, oh, there was a shift there. Hmm. But I'm not going to stop and say, or you might stop and say, like, something happened, but you're kind of just noticing it and tracking it and going, that's interesting. Maybe I talk to this one a little bit differently, or, what's this one
Yeah,
about?
I love that idea too of like talking to like the different parts at the party differently depending on their energies, right? The one that's like eating food under the table in secret, I'm going to talk to that one differently than the one that's like the life of the party and is the nice girl that everybody loves. Like I'm going to talk to those two parts very differently.
Yeah. I'm going to change maybe my strategy a little bit, but that's the other thing of practicing this, is doing it in your natural voice. And that's the other thing that people really struggle with, is because sometimes we get stuck in therapist parts during a session, which is totally understandable, and they're there. They have to come along and, kind of do their thing. But um, sometimes we can get stuck in therapist parts where it's like, how do I say this? How do I do this? Versus, 'cause the way I say it, like I end up having this conversation a lot with people that come to me for consultation, is it's like I'll be meeting with them and I get to know them, and it's like I know their personality, and it's like, I would have zero concern bringing you to a social function and having you like talk to people and meet people. And you seem very, capable of having dialogue and getting to know. You've asked me questions about me, and you talk about your clients in such a curious and interested way. But when you start to do direct access, for some reason that goes away. Like, why? Why did that just change? You're just getting to know somebody. You're
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
befriending somebody, and
Is
and
it
you're
like
so go
like their
ahead.
therapist voice or like, oh, like a baby voice or sort of like different, like a just different voice?
Yeah. Versus just being like, "Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm really curious about you. Tammy said a few things. This is like, part of Tammy says that you're real annoying, or that, that she was saying that you like ruined the last relationship. Like, what do you think about that?" Not to try to like start a fight, but like, it's like, "Hey, like, this is what I've heard. Tell me." Like, I don't think those things about you. Like, I actually think that there's a reason you show up, and I just want to get to know what that reason is, and being honest. Because sometimes the more honest you are, like, the more parts will feel comfortable with you. Parts sense agendas. And so if you're just upfront, my agenda is to get to know you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I felt that too. I actually felt like you really cared about that part of me, and that felt really nice.
Yeah. Because I have to. I have to care. If I don't care, then it doesn't work. What I know about IFS, like the foundation, is like it's a part, and there's a reason it's doing what it's doing. Like there's like, as we say, like there's a like in each person's life, there's a secret history. If we could read the secret history of each person's life, we would find sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. That's like
Mm,
the Longfellow quote that Dick uses. And I'm trying to find that secret history. I'm
yeah,
trying, like, what is your secret history? You got a story to tell, and man, do I want to hear it,
yeah,
because there's a reason you're an asshole. There's a reason and that's part is like, hey, like
that's
the
great.
the reality is this part may treat people poorly. This part may actually be the part, like some of the reason why their relationships suffer. And there's a there's a way to heal what's behind that. But
Yeah,
I gotta want to understand that part. I have to want to know its secret history. I have to know that there's something behind it in order that can disarm the hostility that maybe even parts of me are feeling.
yeah, that's good. we're going to have to wrap up, but I just want to give a shout out to all the really cool stuff that you're doing.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll just have to have you come on again and just talk about all the cool stuff that you do. So, why don't you tell everybody, I know you do like three other extra things that you're into.
Yeah, I wish it were just 3, but like I mentioned before, sometimes like I just get really excited about doing new things and pursue them. So, I do a lot of couples work. So I do couples intensives, where I incorporate the experiential techniques that I've learned with an IFS base, of course, tracking a couples cycle. And so we spend, either an afternoon or a couple days, either at my office or wherever they'd like to meet, doing like a couples retreat or intensive. And then recently, I've started to form groups for people that have been through a psychedelic experience. So there's a lot of people getting into and using the tools of psychedelics to heal trauma and understand themselves and understand their system and their parts in really profound ways. And that's done in varying degrees of efficacy as far as like the therapeutic side of the intervention goes. So I just wanted to create a space where we can, again, use some of these experiential techniques in a group to integrate what they've experienced. So I do post-psychedelic integration groups.
I love that. I love that. And then are you still doing like personal growth workshops? Like, is that something you're still working on and doing?
Yeah, that's like my favorite thing on earth to do. And I do some of them, run some experiential groups here at my office, but where I really get to do that the most is through a program I work for in outside Tennessee. It's called Onsite.
Hmm.
And Onsite is a retreat center where they have people come to do these experiential, essentially week-long personal growth workshops, which are just really powerful, life-changing stuff.
Love it. Love it. Love it. And then, is there anything else you want to say about direct access that we didn't cover?
I've had the unique, well, not totally unique, but I've had the just awesome privilege of being able to be a program assistant for Frank Anderson for his trauma and neuroscience a bunch of times. And last time we uh, met, he said that you know the reason a lot of people are struggling with trauma, newer IFS clinicians, is because direct access isn't second nature. And so
Mm.
um, one way, my sort of continuation of his awareness of that is, in order for it to be second nature, you have to practice it. And so don't put it behind the safety glass and only bring it out when it's an emergency. Use it in all of your sessions, practice it, and use it when the stakes are low so that you can get comfortable with it, so that it does feel like second nature, so that when you do absolutely have to use direct access, when it is really the only way to get to help the unblending process, it feels more comfortable and you're more flexible with it.
Love it. That's great. I love that. So Dave, let me ask you the last question. If you had to do something different in your world, in your life, than what you do already, what would you do?
I I'm an Enneagram 5, so my imagination is somewhat limited.
Okay. All right. So I should have made sure that you spent a lot of time looking up answers to this question as a
There you
5.
go.
Yeah. Okay.
ChatGPT it. But to answer your question, I can refer to like a past experience. Right before I got into grad school, I was living in Utah and I was working at one of the resorts as a ski instructor. And then I also got a job working for JetBlue as like a Spanish speaking reservation person. So there was a time in my life right before grad school where I was skiing for free and flying for free. And I was like, why am I going to grad school? I have just achieved the answer to that question, which is skiing and traveling and flying as part of my job for free. And that was awesome. But I also wanted a career. So I left both
Yeah.
those jobs and
Yeah.
got
So you
trained
made some
in
bad
MS.
choices.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Dave. This was great. I really appreciate this. And I am going to accept your challenge and start doing more explicit direct access for sure.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. And thank you for that piece of work with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Anytime. Thank you for having me on. I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you left a rating, a review, a like, comment, share with your family, your friends. That would mean so much to me. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or on Amazon. You can visit my website, tammysallenberger.com, or you can download a free Get to Know a Should part of you. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and at The One Inside on Facebook and on YouTube. Jeff Schrum co-produces The One Inside, and I am forever grateful for Jeff. Also thankful for Jack Rudin for creating the music, and just thank you for listening. 6 seasons, over 1 million downloads. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you in this community. I'll see you next time.